fact that when we compare religious life here in the United States, you compare it with, well, Africa, it must be the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're well-educated women. We have the backing of the church. But I go to Africa and find out the women in Africa are extremely poor.
Mm-hmm.
They are out in the bush. They do not have the education that we have. That they are also hungry.
Mm.
They're very powerful women. They work well with the people trust them. But they really have a hard life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to learn that. And because of culture, you know, they have 1 foot in the traditional religion and a half a foot in Christianity, or the other way around, you know, and they're really, you know, they're really poor and struggling.
And see, this is one of the things that I learned too, going over to Liberia, is that you know that you're going to another culture, but you don't know how that other culture even has a different mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have a Western logic.
Mm-hmm.
Their logical system is different.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to explain. Okay, it's hard to live.
Mm-hmm.
You know, mixing the two. You know, you can become judgmental and say, "What is wrong with these people? Don't they know?" Blah blah blah. You know, and then you find out that you're the one that's the fish out of water.
That's right. That's right.
For example, when I was teaching first grade, okay, my first assignment in a village, and I had a bachelor's degree, and the woman that was teaching on the other side of the room, okay, there were 100 of us, 100 kids in this one big room, 50 faced one way, 50 faced my way, and the woman who taught on the other side had finished second grade, had a second grade education, so she could teach first. And that was the way it was, and you're saying, what is this all about? Mm-hmm. And this is exactly, and yet, anyone who could read book, they call it read book, mm-hmm. was highly exalted in a tribe.
Mm-hmm.
So is that still going on?
That is still going on, and the tribe really holds a place of honor. Mm-hmm. You know, there's no such thing as the African culture, because there are many cultures within each of the countries.
Right.
You know, and for me, I just sit on my hands and keep trying to learn, not only, you know, with my head, but with my heart also. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's been a great learning experience. Mm-hmm. But I agree that there's the people really want to learn. They really struggle to learn. And that's part of the problem with HIV, with the spread of it.
Yes.
Because they can't pay their school fees. So someone comes along, and a young woman wants to stay in school, and what they call a sugar daddy will come and say, well, I'll pay your school fees. But, you know, there's no free lunch.
No.
So she has to pay, and then she ends up with the virus.
Yeah, and there's also a very different way of looking at sexuality.
That's right.
And that's the kind of thing that it has to be part of the picture, is that, for example, when I was there, a man could come up and say, I would like to be loving to you tonight. Mm-hmm. I'd say, oh, that's very nice, but no thank you. But, you know, and the only time you got in trouble with that, or the man would get in trouble, is if he had relationships with a woman who was already married. Mm-hmm. And then he would have to pay damages. Mm-hmm. So women are looked at in a completely different way. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that's something that you were aware of very quickly.
I believe that women have cannot say no to sex at all. Because if they do refuse their husbands or their boyfriends, they will be beaten. I would say that's one common practice throughout Africa.
Right.
Right. And even the most educated woman, maybe even educated in the United States, will go back and be married, but it's no different for her either. The man is first. The man comes first.
And that's, you know, what he says is what he gets. Are you still encountering that mindset where the men believed that if they had sex with a virgin or with a young child, that they would get rid of their HIV/AIDS?
Yes, most definitely.
And what countries are still in that? Are they all that way? Or?
Well, the countries in the West are more prone to thinking like that. The countries in the West are not as developed as the countries in Southern Africa or in East Africa. So that's still around, and you can't imagine the influence that culture has on all of this. I mean, culture even demands that women have intercourse with their husbands, even though they have the virus. You know, I would think of that as killing your wife. Or, well, I guess folks don't see that in those terms.
No. The whole idea of taking medication now, is that something? Well, let me back up. When you go there to these conferences, what is the kind of thing that usually occurs? Is this where, I'm sure it's not, you're telling them what they have to do?
Okay.
What is kind of like
what happens? Right.
Yeah.
All right. Once a group of sisters agree that they want a conference, or maybe a couple think that they want a conference, we say, well, call together 12 or 14 leaders in your country. Call them together, let us know the time, and we negotiate a time, and they come together. They come together for maybe about 3 or 4 days.
You're talking about leaders in the government?
No, leaders in religious life.
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
Yeah, and they don't have to be superiors, you know. They can be. So they come together, and then we go through a process. We ask them what their experience has been of HIV/AIDS. What does that mean? What issues then comes out of those experiences, and then how would you address that? And so they go through the pain. They share the pain of losing people they love. They share all of that pain, and the pain is overwhelming at times. And then they develop the issues, like how would you address those issues? What do those issues speak to you about? Then by the end of the 3 days, they say, yes, I think more sisters could profit by something like this. And then we say, well, there's one other thing, though. If we have a conference, if you decide to have a conference, you need to run the conference. You need to develop the issues. You need to develop the topics. And part of it, at the end of the 5-day conference, is that you develop action plans. So
this is all empowering these women.
Exactly, Lorraine.
To deal with what they know best.
And how to deal with it. And so you talked about logic. Well, try to develop action plans. You know, remember when we learned how to develop action plans when we taught school, you know?
Right.
So that's the empowering of it. So the sisters themselves take responsibility for it. Plus, after the conference, and I'll go into the conference a little bit, they are responsible to me to send reports, to send back evaluations, and to send back a very detailed and specific expenditure sheet, you know.
Oh, so part of what the sisters here are doing are helping them financially to do this.
Right, and that's why it's called sister to sister. It's a sister in America, a sister in the United States, working with a sister in Africa. And the sisters always say, well, who sent you here? Why have you come? And I said,